You franchise your business, you enter an entirely new industry, you're ready to learn franchising, you're ready to grow your franchise. So, who do you connect with? What communities do you join? Organizations do you join? And what resources do you leverage? I'm really glad to be with my friend Liane Caruso. Liane is Senior Vice President of Franchise and Entrepreneur Media. And for those of you that are entering the franchise space, you're a franchisor, you're starting off, Liane is definitely an industry leader. She's very influential, very involved in the franchise community. And I think today, great advice, and it's going to be a great conversation about really integrating in the franchise world. So welcome, Liane.
Thanks, Charles. So happy to be here.
Yeah. So one of the biggest issues is people franchise their business, and you're inundated in the franchising process. You're, you know, consultants are contacting you about franchising your business. You have all of this happening. You go through this process. You're now a franchisor. Maybe you're getting involved a little with some broker networks. You're working on your website. But when I speak with our clients, we always focus on that bigger vision, that 3 to 5 year vision of really growing a franchise organization and learning. And where I think there's important steps is building that industry connection and really getting to learn through meeting others in industry. And I thought there's no one better than you to speak to about what you'd recommend and how you'd go about the process.
Sure. Well, thanks. I actually love this part of franchising because the franchise community is so impactful, and they're, um, you probably heard before they call it a franchise family, and it's everybody is just so helpful, and so like a true community helping people, especially starting out. The first thing you can do is just go to LinkedIn and find find all the franchise brands and all of the support that people give to each other, even just online. But there's lots of things that franchise brands can do to get started. First things first, of course, join the IFA, which is the International Franchise Association. The IFA is an organization that's very supportive to franchise brands, very from micro emerging to very large brands and to suppliers in the industry. So that organization not only produces great content, they have webinars, educational webinars and resources, but they also have events that are very helpful to connect with other brands that are either in your space or in the same kind of age that you are. And so that's that those two steps I would say are number one.
Liane, it's so interesting because, and it happens at IFA conferences and events, franchisors that succeed when they start off, so they come to these conferences, and Leanne's advice is, I think LinkedIn's an amazing resource, and I think joining IFA is an incredible resource, right? And my experience is we have clients now that 100, 200 units, but I remember years ago being at an IFA conference with them. They maybe have 1 or 2 franchisees. They're learning the franchise world. Maybe brokers aren't interested in them yet, but they keep learning, they keep getting involved. And so it's really those founders, franchise founders and leadership team members that really keep engaging and never give up on that. I think they win. And so I think IFA is a great resource. You have the annual conference, you have emerging conferences. I'm curious, when you bring up LinkedIn, your advice is just go out and connect with as many people as possible in the franchise world.
I think as you start to build relationships, you start connecting with people, and as you connect with people, engagement begets engagement, right? So as you're meeting these people at these different conferences or virtually, you'll find, especially in franchising, that people will connect you with other people that may be resourceful to you. So instead of feeling like you're on an island and going through this franchising thing yourself, you're busy building a business, and you're also now you've built a successful business, and now you're franchising a business, which is a whole new business model in itself. And so just understanding that there are many, many people out there who have felt your pain, or who know what you're going through and can be resourceful to you. So as you're, connecting with these people or joining even the webinars online that IFA has available to you, or many other organizations have available, start connecting with those people on LinkedIn as well. And you'll see, you find, you build your community like that.
So Liane, join IFA, start getting involved on a digital spectrum, right? Recently, this past week, there was the IFE Expo in New York City. And what's your thought for new franchisors in terms of expos and events like that? Should they be attending? Should they be exhibiting? It depends on budgets, but generally, what do you recommend there?
Yeah, so this is the other difficult part is you find as you come into franchising, there are many events and many expos that you can attend, but it all comes down to budget, time, bandwidth, and goals and objectives. So the IFA convention in itself might be too big and too expensive in your first year, but as you mentioned, they have a new and emerging conference that might make a little bit more sense, because then you're surrounded by other brands who are in the same, space that you are, also with mentors there of people who have been there, done that. In terms of expos, there's IFE, which is one of the largest expos, and then there's all of these regional shows through National Events Management and others. And I would say primarily look at your at your budget and your goals. If you're looking to grow in small spaces, the regional shows might make the most sense for you. If you're in the Atlanta area and you're looking to grow bigger in Atlanta, do the Atlanta franchise show, and that might make more sense. And then expos work for some brands, but they don't work for other brands. And people love them and people hate them. So I think definitely it's worth a try. Start small, see how it goes, and see if if it's a good fit for your brand. Also consider that expos might be great, but if you have the wrong people at the show with the wrong motivation, then they're not going to work for you either.
Yeah, the expos are tough for those startup franchisors and emerging. I think it's about perspective too. So you could go to a show, not exhibit, but just walk around the show, see how other franchisors are marketing,
Definitely.
the conversations they're having, the value proposition they're offering. And then if you do exhibit at a show, I think it's important to have the right perspective. It's very difficult to get a sale from a show, but it's more about learning, hearing what people are asking, and really building up that franchise IQ in that website.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and look, years ago when we took over a franchise company, we exhibited at a show, and there were, and it's exciting, and there's a ton of leads and no sales. Maybe it's not the show's fault. Maybe it's how we followed up. Maybe it was we weren't ready with our processes. And so these are all things to take into account, I think, for emerging franchisors. But what becomes interesting is tying it all together, which is community, right? So when you're discussing shows and you're involved in IFA events or other networking events, those are the conversations to have with other franchisors. Like, what do you find effective? Do shows work for you? What are you doing for engagement? What does digital look like? And I guess these are all the conversations at the shows where Liane's very popular, and everyone's talking to Liane. I'm by myself, so I could watch all this happening, but I assume, in addition to social, these are parts of the conversations going on at these events.
Absolutely. And again, don't recreate the wheel. All of these other brands have been in your time frame, or you've had this experience before. So definitely learn from other brands. These expos and these events and these different conferences, they're all part of a bigger pie, right? So it's not end all be all. There is no one silver bullet. And I've worked with many brands, as have you, that what works for one brand does not work for another brand. So I think having those conversations with the other CEOs and founders of what has worked for them, and then kind of making it your own. And it's also, trial and error too. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree that you should try the expos at least once or twice and see if it works for you, because it does work for some brands, but I also recognize wholeheartedly that it does not work for all brands.
So, Leanne, as a franchise executive, I think sometimes I ask bad questions, but as a franchise executive, from everything you've seen, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with events or expos, what do you see as the success factors when you look at franchisors and the startups? There's something different between the ones that don't accelerate, they get stuck, and those that grow. And in my opinion, it's not always the budget, it's the founder and the leadership team and really leveraging and outmaneuvering. But what do you see as those variables between brand A that just doesn't gain traction, brand B, almost same business, but it wins?
Right. That's a great question. So I think it's back to your original point, staying engaged, building a community, and really learning from other people who have been in that place before. And I think it's getting out of your own way. Um, that I think that's one of the major pieces to early franchise success is the CEO and founder often get in their own way. They're not bringing on the right people for their team, and they're not executing a proper strategy in place. And a lot of times it's understandable. They're operating on a shoestring budget, right? They built this business from ground up. They know how to do the thing that they have in their business, but they don't know how to franchise. So I think that community becomes very helpful in this instance to learn from other successful franchise leaders who have been successful and have tried all of the things, but not just listening to them, really taking it in and see how it applies to their business.
You really hit on an answer. But when I say it's an answer, it's really alerting everyone to the issue. I think the answer is a lifelong process, but
Sure.
people, and I love, you didn't just say strategy, but it's executing the proper strategy,
Mhm.
right? And then tying this all in together, your advice and really how it does connect is the next question becomes, well, what people do I need? What is the right strategy? And there's no set formula. And then your advice, Liam, which I think is great, which is that's really where community comes in, right? Because that's where you start filling in the gaps. It's not even affirmative knowledge. It's like, okay, well, I see this brand's doing well. I see they have a franchise sales director, or this person is doing this. And you start to see what you're missing or the gaps that you don't see clearly, but you see it through others. I think that's really
Sure.
powerful.
Absolutely. I think that might be where an advisory board comes into play, or a mentorship program. I think there are plenty of people in franchising who are willing to be mentors. I actually just got involved with a program this year, which I love. It's called 30 Under 30, and a group just started it because they saw a gap in the need of mentorship to young brands. So it's people who have been in the industry for a while, mentoring people who have 30 locations or less, and kind of, really shining the light on things that they could be doing better, or where they're having struggles or issues, or what to do next, or who to connect with next. Which
Yeah.
events do I go to?
That's smart with the advisory. And I mean, with Nick Powell's in 1851, we started Franchise Growth Mastermind and the Facebook community, and
Yes.
which is what excites me is when I see the interaction, and you'll see a startup franchisor, and everyone is so willing to share information.
I recommend that group all the time. So I love that group, and I love how I think it kind of really, took its leap in over COVID. But I the way everybody helps everybody, there's no, I mean, there are plenty of experts in there, but there's no administrator who's coming in answering the questions.
Right.
It is a community helping the community and saying, hey, have you guys ever experienced this before with a franchisee? Or, hey, what do I need to do for X? And various different brands from various different levels are jumping in and giving their insight and their responses. And I love that group.
Well, and back to community, right? Leon, no one ever sells, right? You actually see
Right.
people like all these people offering this advice. They're not selling, and I'll see people I know who are successful franchisors willing to just offer advice right out of the gate. So,
Right.
yeah,
And they even say, call me,
yeah,
that
yeah,
call me tomorrow.
yeah.
And you've got the
That's true.
CEO of a major brand
Yeah,
who's got
no,
like
that
a
is
thousand
true.
locations. And it's like, this is so I do think I love that
Well,
group. That's definitely something that everybody should do when they get into franchising.
and so that's one of the intangibles I see. Like when we're working with our clients and they're franchising their business, I do say, hey, the people that succeed, the ones that win, they start off not knowing franchising, then 3 years later, they're speaking at an event. And I'm getting, text messages from other clients, taking photos with them, and they were relentless in getting involved in community. Um, so that's pretty amazing. And then I'm curious because I think it's good. Again, back to community and giving advice, which this video does, just off the cuff. I know it's not the heart of this video, and if I'm a startup franchisor, as I'm envisioning the next 2 to 3 years, what would be the key people I'd be looking for to add to my team, or even on a fractional basis, be consulting with?
Um, well, selfishly, I wholeheartedly agree that a fractional CMO, um, one of the things that I uncovered when I had my consultancy was it was such a gap that people had for micro emerging brands or emerging brands that they didn't have the marketing level, the C-suite expertise that they needed for their brand, that also understood franchising. And oh, by the way, also understood franchise development and how the marketing and sales align. So building a franchise and building a consumer franchise marketing program is a beast in itself. And if you don't have the right team in place to help you understand that strategy for your franchisees and to help you understand what vendors are right for you in this space, that's a challenge in itself. And then also how that marketing aligns with a national marketing program, and then how it aligns with your sales and your franchise development. So trying to build a brand operating with your director of marketing who understands how to sell sandwiches might not be the right person to help you build the franchise marketing piece of it. So I would certainly say a fractional CMO or somebody who understands franchise marketing to come and consult with you. Um, Understanding franchise development, getting the right team in place for your sales. I feel like, and you could probably agree with me, that when brands are launching, everybody wants to talk to the CEO and founder because they're the ones that sell. Where there gets to a point when the CEO and founder can't take all of these, hopefully you've got a nice, healthy pipeline and they can't take all of those calls and be the salesperson. So having a true franchise development sales process, sales and marketing process, and understanding that franchise development is not just sales, it's also marketing, is also key.
Those, I think that's critical on the people side, especially
Right.
because I think too many startup emerging franchisors sort of let their franchise development or franchise sales just happen.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sort of, yeah. So I think it's, and even on a fractional basis or the right, having that look, and we do legal, but I think franchise sales and development and that marketing team and those marketing suppliers are more important than your legal any day, right? Because,
Right.
but it's also building that framework, I think, so it lives on. I think the mistake everyone makes is they're spending dollars for today without any residual value in their brand and what they're doing and momentum. So for sure, that franchise development marketing person, I think it's a big gap. And if you can't
Absolutely.
hire directly, but there's resources go tap into. And then, right, because these are all good. So we got people. How about on strategy, Liane? Not, you don't have to go into detail, but general, just on a roadmap. If I know I have to go north or south, what's the strategy direction I should be going in?
That's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question. I like, Liane, I like the answer too. No, but from a basic, say, what strategy should they be focused on? So I'll give an example. For most brands, I recommend as the initial strategy is to let your brand season in the first 1 and 2 years, meaning you enter the franchise space. A lot of times I tell clients, if you have $1 million to spend this year, you're going to waste it
Right.
because you have to develop your brand. And so I guess the tell them to focus on is organic sales, people that know
Mhm.
your brand,
Yes.
and build out those brand resources that are going to live on, those founder stories, your website,
Yep.
and start engaging with brokers. I guess it was a loaded question for sure. Maybe yeah.
So with that example, I would say with that example, I would say I agree with you wholeheartedly. Focus on growth that focus on growth that helps you also learn and grow from that growth. Don't just take a check from anybody who wants to buy your brand. If you're in Florida and they're in California, that's going to set you up for failure. If you want to grow in Florida, focus on growth in Florida and focus on minimal growth in Florida. I know we all want to be wildly successful and have 1,000 locations, but that's not realistic. If your processes aren't in place and if you're not learning from those initial franchisees, and if you're not learning from building your process, then you're going to run into so much trouble. If your franchisees aren't happy because you did something wrong because you're too busy focused on franchise development, you will fail very quickly. So yeah, so yes, grow small, grow realistically, build the processes in place as you grow, and focus on franchisee satisfaction because it's really the franchisee satisfaction that's going to ultimately end up selling your brand.
So my bad question, however bad it was, that's great advice, right? Focus on your growth strategy, geography, processes in place, and not only having them in place, but building and improving them. Love the third, franchisee support and validation, right? So
Mhm.
if you're just focused on sales and not making them happy, you're going to fail. Grow small, right? Um, I think that is great advice. I sort of feel like that's the missing part of my initial advice about seizing, the part I never understood. No, but that's really good. Liane, I know anything in terms, I know you're doing a bunch of things at Entrepreneur Media and really leading up their team. Anywhere anyone should check out or on the franchisor level, I guess Entrepreneur, right?
Entrepreneur, we have the Franchise 500 that we release every year, but if all brands should be on our website regardless. So first thing brands should do is they should go to our
Yeah.
website, submit their brand. We have listings; it's completely free, and then um, when the Franchise 500 list gets the applications are pushed out, which at the time of this recording it should be any day now in June. Every brand should submit regardless of if they think that they're going to be on the Franchise 500 list or not. They could be emerging, they might not meet the qualifications, but they could still qualify for other lists throughout the year. So we have new and emerging. We have a new and emerging list. We have top food. We have best of the best. We have global. We have a bunch of top yeah, hot franchise trends. We have other lists that they could qualify for, even if they don't make the top 500. That stamp of entrepreneur, you know, that validation in itself, being an award-winning franchise brand. And again, it's completely free. There is no charge for any of that I just said, but it is great to have that exposure and to be printed in the magazine and online. But we're building out a ton of content. We're launching Entrepreneur TV. We've got webcasts, we've got podcasts, tons of stories all about franchising and entrepreneurship. So we're happy to be a resource, and a big fan of the franchise industry.
Yeah, no, and as a franchisor, as you get involved more in the community, the franchise 500 becomes very important. I didn't even think of that even at the startup stage, which I'll start advising our clients too, which
Please
is,
do.
yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And advice on community building, those of you watching this, I would go to LinkedIn. I would look up Liane Caruso, link up with her. And I think that's the best starting point. But
Yeah.
Liane, I appreciate this. I never know where these videos go, but there's great people we speak with, and so it turns out great. And I really appreciate the advice.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Awesome.
I'm a big fan of yours too. So
Thanks, Liane.